Next question is, in regards to storytelling in the Quran being a powerful tool, what is your opinion of writing quote-unquote Islamic fiction, especially in times where there is a need for halal avenues for leisure and thought?
Great question. Not only writing, but I think also Muslims have to produce really world-class literature, film, all of these things. Muslims should be, عَاقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا عُقِبْتُمْ بِهِ. Allah says, fight them with what they fight you with. And there's a story about the man who, the founder of the Salvation Army, he used to write these hymns with the tunes of popular songs, the very popular songs. And somebody said to him, why are you using popular songs to put hymns to? And he said, I don't want the devil to have all the best tunes, So that's part of the problem, is that, the demonic stuff, it's like Christian cinema is really, tends to be really poor generally. And that's unfortunate. That's not the way it should be. Obviously the demons are helping the other ones, I think, so they get the extra boost. But I would say it's very important. Also fiction, our tradition, the Prophet ﷺ told the story, it's one of my favorite hadiths, the story of Zara'. Is that a true story? Allahu alam. But the way it's told, it's an incredible piece of literature, just as an event. And the Prophet also used stories as examples, things like this. We know that the Prophet only spoke the truth, but the ulama wrote, for instance, the maqamat, which when I was studying Arabic many years ago, and I dip into them every once in a while, but I love the maqamat genre, which is fiction. And these were great ulama. Al-Hariri was a great alim. Badi'u Zaman al-Hamadani was a great alim and a great, very pious man. And as Jarullah Zamakhshari wrote his maqamat in the Haram. So the maqamat are amazing fictionalized stories. One of the things that I learned, in thinking about the maqamat, because like Badi'u Zaman al-Hamadani in his maqamat, the character Abu Fath al-Iskandari is a nasab. He's a charlatan, he's a con artist, but he's a religious con artist. And I really felt that he was warning people about people that use religion and con people with religion, that character is a real character. He's worse than a mafioso. I'll take a don any day of the week, because at least the don, you know what you're dealing with. But a religious charlatan who uses religion to fool people, and we're more susceptible to being fooled by piety than we are by other things, because it's so hard. If you're just an ordinary, average, common two type of person, it's so difficult for you to imagine somebody using God to trick people. It's really hard for people that are normal, because it's such an enormity. And so fiction's really important, but I think it should be good. Like I really think Muslims should get back to itqan and ihsan. And there's a lot of people that just, it's like poetry. It's better to memorize great poetry and be a rawi than to write really bad poetry. That's my opinion, And people love to hear poems recited. They sound much better when they're recited than when they're read. But the Arabs have that tradition of the rawi. They weren't poets, but they loved poetry, so they would just memorize a bunch of poetry and then they would recite it, So, but we're in an age, somebody asked Fran Lebowitz, what advice do you give to young writers? And she said, stop writing. Her point, which she elaborates on, was that the self-esteem movement has made everybody think they're talented. And first of all, you can learn to write, but it takes a long time to really become a good writer. And So that's where I would say, learn how to write first. And that takes time. And that means learning rhetoric. It means reading a lot of great literature. Next one.
Thank you for that. There are multiple questions, mashallah. Lots of questions in common about the structure of the Quran that we have today in terms of juz and the suwar. So it looks like if I were to summarize it, it's could you elaborate further on the structure that we have today?
Right. Well, I mean, the Muslims, traditionally, the sunnah was to read, the sunnah of the Muslims was to read the Mus'haf at least once a month. So you did it 12 times a year. In Ramadan, they tended to maybe do it 2, 4, or more times. And in fact, when the Prophet ﷺ complained, اتخذوا هذا القرآن مهجورا اتخذوا قومي هذا القرآن مهجورا. My people have taken this Quran, have abandoned it. In the commentaries, they say that if you read it twice a year, that you're not under that hukam. But if it's less than that, then it's like you've abandoned the Quran. So it's good to read it. So for that reason, it was put into the ajza. And so that came later. That did not come from the Prophet ﷺ or from the Salaf. It came later. And then they did the ahzab because they read it at Maghrib and after Asr. So for instance, in Morocco, and believe it or not, every month there are 250,000 Khatam in the masjids of Morocco. And that's been calculated by the Ministry of Awqaf. Since the time of the Muwahidun, the Moroccans have been reciting the Quran in the masjid, and they do it, initially they did it between, after Fajr, they did a hizb, and then after Asr, because those are times people don't pray. So it was, and those are the really good times for بالغدو والأصال. Those are the times to do dhikr. That's when the birds all congregate and do their dhikr. So that's why they did that. And then they put the thuman was for memorization, because you would do like the thuman, the ruba'. So beginning students would write the 1/8 of a hizb, and then then they would move to a thuman, and then they would move like to nisf al-hizb, and then some could learn even faster than that. So those are all to help us recite the Quran. My personal experience is I really like using the Quran Mujazza'a, which is that has 30 different booklets, because it really facilitates for doing a wird of the Quran. And my advice to everybody is just abandon all these other awrad that you're doing and just do the Quran. Because traditionally the awrad were in addition to the Quran. Now people do the awrad and they don't do the Quran. Those awrad were done in addition to the Quran. So it's very important, if you're not doing a wird of Quran every day, you should not be doing these other awrad. If you're reciting the Quran once a month and you want to do more, you can either do more of the Quran or you can do the awrad. The adhkar al-sabah wal masa are actually preferred at that time, but you can do a very short version of them. You don't have to do these extensive. I'll tell you a secret that I've realized. There's 2 reasons. It used to bother me that there were so many books on tajweed. Like, it really bothered me. Like, why do the ulama write books? There's like 1 million books on tajweed. And they all say exactly the same thing. There's no difference to any of them. They all say the exact same. Some of them are a little better produced than others, or they might have a little, but they all say. Then I realize I want to write a book on tajweed because it's brilliant. Everybody that learns from your book, you get the reward of all their recitations. So it just makes perfect sense why there's millions of books on tajweed. It's actually a really smart thing to do. And this is the same with the awrad. The shuyukh are really smart. And so they all wanted if you're reciting the wird of Imam al-Shadiri or Sidi Ahmed Zarruq or Imam al-Haddad, they're getting all the reward of your dhikr. So it's actually really smart to do that. So this idea somehow that, we abandon this is what I think really created a lot of the Salafi impulse, was to see how far people were getting away from these fundamental things. The people that are doing, Mawlid all the time, and they're not reciting the Quran and things like that. So these are things that we have to really think about. So I would definitely advise having a wird of the Quran, even if it's one page. You'll get better if you get good at reciting the Quran. You can recite a juz in 20 minutes with a hadar. There's 3 modes of recitation. If you do the longer mode of tartil, then it's gonna take longer. But if you do the hadar, you can get through it in 20 minutes. And there's a great blessing in doing that every day. And in the Moroccan method, you know where you are. Like today's 17th day, which is Badr, by the way. So may Allah bless the shuhada of Badr and all the people that supported the Prophet ﷺ at that time. So that's a great blessing to do it. You begin with the lunar month, and then you'll always know where you are in the lunar month. So you'll know, is this the 16th or 17th night, that we're coming into, based on the moon sighting. So that's how they do it in Morocco. So I would really recommend that. We need to get back to the Quran devotionally, but also practically using it. I have a friend, he's a really brilliant scholar in Kuwait, very, very engaging person and wonderful to spend time with, has a really phenomenal memory. But his name is Shaykh Abdullah Ma'tuq. He runs the supporting the Ighatha there. And Shaykh Abdullah bin Bayt did something with him where they fed 1 billion meals, alhamdulillah. So anyway, he does 30 Khatam every Ramadan, and so that's all he does. Like Ramadan is just, so he had a friend of his, in Kuwait who wanted to go to Medina with him and do the Khatam. I want to do it every day with you. He said, no, this takes a lot of training. It's like a marathon, right? So he said, no, it takes a lot. No, he said, I can do it. So he went there and he said after Fajr, because you have to recite really fast to do it. And he turned over and the guy was asleep.